Welcome, everybody, to the Legal Tech Week Journalist Roundtable for September 24th, 2021. I had to look at my little calendar over here. I couldn't even remember what date it was. The time has been going by way too quickly. This is Bob Ambrogi, and this is the weekly program where we talk live about the week's top stories in legal tech and innovation. And your panelists today, as you see them before you, I don't even know if we need to do introductions anymore, but I guess we should, because who knows whether there's somebody new in the audience this week. So
well, there's also the audio version.
Like there is also the audio
live,
version. The millions of people who listen to the audio version might get confused. Right. So we should do that. So let's go around, and Steve, why don't you kick it off?
Hi, I'm Steve Embry. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads. I'm also chair-elect of the ABA Law Practice Division for this upcoming year.
And Nikki.
My name is Nikki Black. I am the legal technology evangelist with My Case Law Practice Management Software. We provide software for solo and small law firms. And I also am a legal technology writer, author, journalist. I write columns for Above the Law, ABA Journal, Daily Record, and I write weekly columns for the My Case blog as well.
You should try and pick up a few more publications. You don't have enough publications there. Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I'm assistant managing editor for the ABA Journal. I don't write for nearly as many outlets as Nikki does, but we can't all be that prolific.
Yeah, well, and Joe, how about you?
Joe Patrice. I'm the editor of Above the Law. I did not expect to be here today because I am simultaneously also, as some people know, the debate coach at West Point, and we have a tournament that just started. But as it turns out, I don't need to do anything for the first half hour of it. So I thought I could hang out with you all.
Perfect. Glad to have you. And I thought Victoria was joining us today, but I don't see her. And Caroline, I'm not sure. Zach is away, I know. So if Victoria pops in at some point, that'll be great. But so Joe, since you might have to leave before we get to the end, you want to kick it off today?
Yeah, so I had two quick things to talk about. The first of which was that a few weeks ago, we had a conversation where I was breaking down thoughts of mine from the ILTA conference. And one of the things I talked about was ActiveNav. I had gotten a sense from talking to them about moving, that one of the ideas they seemed to be talking about was using their technology to do different stuff instead of just utilizing it in an e-discovery space, like adapting it to do governance stuff. And we had a conversation about whether or not that's kind of a future for platforms generally to look for new markets to use their tech. And as it turns out, my guess was entirely correct, because as I wrote this week, they announced a data mapping as a service platform to do basically just what I said that I thought they were talking about. So, I mean, I think they probably were already deep in that, and I was just picking up the little tea leaves. But so that was an interesting legal tech development of the week. Not much more to say since we already talked about it a couple times ago, but I thought that was interesting. The thing I wanted to talk about, though, was no real story, but just an idea. When I look at all these vendors, some vendors are run by folks who came at it from the tech space. And a lot of them, though, are, former lawyers who got fed up at the firm and decided, now I'm going to start this platform. And it got me wondering if there's anyone out there listening who is a lawyer who hates their job as a fourth-year tax associate or whatever it is, and wants to get into a space. They think they have an idea of how to make their job better through tech. How does one? What tips do we have for people wanting to do that sort of thing, wanting to make that career move? Because, do they just have to go down to the annex and learn to code, or are there better ways?
Just call a PE firm and they'll hand them $5 million and they're all set.
Put the word blockchain in whatever you're doing, and yeah.
Yeah. Anybody have thoughts on that? I mean, there was a book that came out a couple of years ago, Coding for Lawyers or something, by a lawyer who basically fits exactly what you're talking about. I forget his name now, but that was sort of the thesis of the book. Was, I mean, he, just kind of got interested in developing some legal tech applications in his own practice, as I recall, and then he ended up doing, learning how to code and then writing, and then basically loved coding so much that he ended up leaving law practice. I don't know whether he started a company per se, but as I recall, he might have actually ended up going to work for Google or something off the top of my head. But that was a pursuit that he wanted to do. I don't think lawyers need to learn how to code in order to start a company, but I think they certainly need to know somebody who knows how to code, or have some good friends who know how to code. That helps.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's good to have a background in it, just so you know what you're doing. You're not totally relying on, third parties or people that, may or may not know what they're doing. But I mean, I found that like the best or the most successful, ventures have been lawyers who worked for a long time, or at least enough time at, doing doing in their practice area, be it litigation, be it IP, be it whatever, and then were able to the point where they were able to notice what inefficiencies there were and like what pain points there were and what areas of improvement there could be, and then fashion their product, accordingly. Like, I mean, like what was it? Alma's product. What was that called? Allegory, I think, or something.
Allegory law.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Also, come up with a name that like isn't, doesn't sound like everything else. I guess, like anything with like an R at the end, or like random capital letters or whatnot. So branding is also a good idea as well. But like, and also, what was it John Tredenik's
Catalyst.
Yeah, that spun off from Holland and Knight, I think. So I mean, like, yeah, these are people who had worked
Holland
for
and
a long
Hart.
time.
Holland and Hart.
Holland and something.
Holland and Hart, Denver. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another
It's
thing.
pronounced the Netherlands.
Yeah.
No, I mean, there are so
Yes.
many stories like that of I mean, I so many of the people I talk to who have launched new products are lawyers who saw a need in their own practices that wasn't being met by anything they could buy off the shelf or that was on the market, and went out and tried to develop something. I mean, somebody just for us in the chat just mentioned, Kira, Doxley from Haley Altman that got acquired by Latera. Those are just a couple of the many examples out there of that. And Noah was a coder, but
I was going to say, just coming at it from maybe a little bit of a different angle. If my advice to people that wanted to get into this field is to look at the type of lawyer and law firms that you're going to be marketing to, because they're different business models within the whole profession. But more importantly, is to understand the business of practicing law. I mean, how law firms make decisions, which is of course a nightmare, as we all know, particularly the larger you get, and what appeals to the business side, understanding the billable hour model and how it fits in, or the contingency fee model and how that fits in. It's really more understanding kind of the business end of things. And what I've seen is, lots of young lawyers start a tech company and they want to sell to lawyers, but they really don't have a good grasp on how law firms work and how pieces within law firms fit together, and how, in too many law firms, any one person can say no and shut the whole thing down. So it's kind of understanding all that, I think, is important.
Well, to sort of piggyback on that, but in a different direction, you got to understand the business of SaaS and of tech, because lawyers think that I've got a great idea. We're going to create this product. It's just going to be awesome and it's going to catch on. But typically, it doesn't matter how great your product is. You need to have people that understand how to run a SaaS business and how to scale it. And you need people that understand marketing. And you need a good sales team. Like, sometimes these companies don't want to invest in sales and marketing. And sometimes the founders are not cognizant of when they have sort of grown beyond their capabilities, unless they've got an MBA and unless they have some sort of experience running a business, a SaaS business in particular, they're going to have a hard time scaling it because they just aren't going to, they're going to be out of the league after a while. And lawyers sometimes don't recognize when they're out of their league. We're not the best at that. So I think that what happens is they will start a company with a good idea and gain a little bit of traction. But if they don't start to recognize that they need to get some funding and invest heavily in those other parts of the business and have someone who really understands how to run the business, run it, they're going to kind of very quickly burn out through their money, and so it's not going to get off the ground. But it's only the lucky ones that do, I would suggest.
Yeah, there's examples of both. I mean, there's plenty of examples of people who started legal tech companies and bootstrapped it and built it up and did well, certainly up to a point. It's funny because I've had some conversations recently with founders of legal tech companies who sort of feel this need to get outside financing because they get news attention when that happens. It's not that they need the money. You know, they've bootstrapped their companies, they're doing well, they're profitable, but all the spotlight keeps shining on the companies that are raising outside funding or getting VC money or PE money or whatever. You know, but I mean, the other thing we've seen, and I'm trying to, I wish I had thought in advance about this topic, because there are also the examples out there of lawyers who have very specific problems and they see them as problems in their practice, and they want to develop technology to address that problem, and they do that and they want to take it to market. But the issue is it's not really a problem for anybody else. I mean, you know, sometimes they have a great idea for something that's a problem for them, but that there really isn't a market for, and they just don't see that. They don't do the market research in advance to see whether it's a viable product.
In terms of what you just said, Bob, the concept of they can take it to a point and grow it to a point. And I feel like there's this pivotal point that with most legal tech companies, especially the ones that are founded by lawyers, where they reach that point, whatever that elusive point is, and they don't realize when they get there that maybe they need to start scaling up some other sides of the, you know, marketing and sales, or bringing in someone who can run the business. And it goes very well up until a point. And then if you don't make the right decisions at that point, it can definitely affect your trajectory significantly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you can say that generally about lawyers, you know, because it just even running a firm and not having anything to do with technology. It's like very often when it comes to marketing and branding and that kind of stuff, it's either unseemly or it's not something that they like doing, or, you know, I mean, obviously there's some lawyers out there who embrace it, but by and large, it's like, you know, I think a lot of people still think of, you know, the guy on TV who's like, we'll get money for you, and, you know, the stuff like that. You know, it's just there is still that kind of aspect of that being a little bit unseemly for some lawyers, or maybe just not in their wheelhouse.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Joe, now you're gonna have to write this all up.
I know, right?
It was a good idea. Talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, I thought this was the right group to have thoughts on it. So
we'll have thoughts on anything. It doesn't really matter. Speaking of thoughts on anything, let's see, what else did we even have to talk about this week? Nikki, what did you have this week? What do you want to talk about this week?
Well, so something caught my eye. I was not here last week. So this was something
And
that
we missed you.
I'm sure it was horrible without me. I bet
It was.
I'm sure. That's very kind. No, thank you. But I saw an ABA Journal article that caught my eye a little over a week ago. I'm pasting it into the chat. And essentially it talked about how California, there was a bill pending to permit remote court hearings through at least mid-2023, not requiring all of them to be remote, but permitting it for certain types of in civil matters. And so I thought that was just super interesting because, you know, clearly that's through 2023, that's through next year, through 2 years. Yeah, that's significantly far out. So it's this idea that the remote appearances have really caught on. I know the judges love them. I've spoken to judges locally at the very start of the pandemic that just loved it because it helped them manage their docket. They had, for routine court appearances, it was great. The lawyers oftentimes liked it for those routine court appearances because they didn't have to sit in court for an hour and then go sit in another court for an hour or go back and forth between courts in the courthouse. For those routine court appearances, it can be perfect. The more complex the proceeding gets, whether it's hearings, trials, jury trials in particular, there are significant downfalls, especially when you're talking about criminal trials, because then you have constitutional issues in terms of the right of confrontation and that type of thing that come up. So I think that's one reason why they limited it to civil trials, but I thought it was just a really interesting development. And I think we're going to see more and more of that, especially as this pandemic seems to be raging on with the Delta variant. The longer that we're partially remote, the longer remote is going to be, the more likely remote is going to become a part of our daily life on the other side, whatever that looks like and whatever that is.
Yeah, I actually edited that piece. That was Lyle Moran wrote that for us, and like he's out in California, so that was something that he picked up on. But I mean, I think one thing that was interesting about that piece was that the lawyers themselves were also pushing for this to continue, at least for the time being. And so there was buy-in from the plaintiffs bar, there was buy-in from civil defense lawyers and whatnot. Really, the only group that like had any kind of issue with this, and we talked about this before, were the court reporters. They were a little concerned about obviously just the idea of like having to take minutes for an online hearing. Also, I think they're worried about some of the use of technology as well. They're used to being able to have a live hearing in front of them where they can take the notes as accurately as they can, and also like take tenor of the atmosphere around them to kind of make sure that they're getting as accurate a picture as possible, as easier when everyone's in front of them. So they express a little bit of trepidation as far as long-term effects of sticking with online hearings and whatnot. But ultimately, I think they took like the middle route where it was okay. Well, it's a good thing to do for now, but I think they still have some concerns going forward. And one thing that I'm seeing in the comments is like talking about Pennsylvania, and like that's actually something that we're looking at going forward. Is just like they, I think Pennsylvania went the other way, and they said that they wanted to discontinue using Zoom hearings and whatnot. I don't have the details in front of me. I don't know if it's for all cases or just civil cases or criminal cases or whatnot. But it is interesting that they're moving in the opposite direction.
Yeah, Ricky just put a link in the chat, but I think you just put it. It just went to hosts and panelists, not to everybody. So I don't know if Ricky, you want to resend that to everybody. But it's an article on law.com about the Pennsylvania courts, I think, but I can't get it because it just law.com just told me that I've reached the limit of my free access and I can't read it.
Me too. I got the exact same thing.
But it's not.
But I'm
terribly
sure it's really
surprising.
good.
It's not terribly surprising to me that California did this. The last few years that I practiced, I had several cases in California, and it always amazed me. Maybe amazed is a strong word, but I was always a little surprised at how often the courts would embrace audio participation by lawyers. And a lot of it was because, in California, particularly Southern California and probably Northern California too, I mean, traffic is always such a nightmare, and the courts are so spread out with so many different locations that it becomes often impossible for a lawyer to predict how long it's going to take him or her to get to a certain place and whether they'll be there on time. And the thing that I always noticed about it is the judges, at least the ones I was in front of, were always very deferential to that process and always, tried to make sure that the lawyers that were attending remotely were heard and were listened to and were given the same level of attention as those that were actually there. So, having been accustomed to that, it's not surprising that they would be embracing the next piece of that, which would be to move to video conferencing. I think it's a great thing because it's, having spent so much of my life waiting around in courtrooms, to be heard on routine motions. It's just, this is a whole lot better.
Yeah, I think I've said a couple of times in this session, I do arbitrations in my practice still, and I just had one a few weeks ago where, one lawyer was in Florida, one lawyer was in Colorado, witnesses were somewhere in Massachusetts, somewhere in other states. Didn't matter. It was just so easy to get everybody together into a hearing, and it just seems like everybody likes it. So courts saying that they're going to extend it through 2023. I think we've talked before, but I wonder whether we're ever going to go back, like so many things we've talked about here, to not ever having, at least not having some sort of a hybrid option for courts and trials, because virtual trials just make a lot of sense in a lot of circumstances for a lot of kinds of cases and a lot of kinds of litigants.
Yeah.
And
for witnesses and jurors.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
Having jurors, how does it? Yeah, I guess that gets more complicated, I guess. But
it does. But I think you talk about the right kind of case, and you start weighing delays and all those sorts of things. We often forget about jurors. I've been called to jury duty 3 or 4 times, and it is so disruptive to your life. Not so much with me, because I could sit there and type on a laptop and do things and eke out a few billable hours. But for so many people, it's just totally disrupts their life and livelihoods. So
right.
I think we as a profession will begin to look at that more and more. Maybe not every piece of a trial could be remote, but certainly some pieces could, and reduce the amount of disruption.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking at the article. I was able to access it for some reason. So I guess the devil's kind of in the details in this case. It's like, for Pennsylvania, what happened was the emergency orders had been in effect until a certain time, and they're about to expire. And I guess some lawyers had pushed, or some people had pushed for them to continue those measures, which included online trials and Zoom hearings and stuff like that. And so they didn't extend it. So it was more a case where they decided not to extend certain measures that had been in place as a result of the pandemic, rather than doing what California did, which was actually have a bill, pass a bill to actually extend, or at least make it semi-permanent for the next couple of years.
So Victor, since you were talking, why don't we can talk about what you've got to talk about this week? Well, was there anything else on that topic before we move off it? I'm sorry, cut everybody off. But Victor, I suspect you're going to talk about Katy Perry this week.
It wasn't as bad as a couple weeks ago when I had to listen to Limp Bizkit's discography. But the Katy Perry, the last album wasn't terrible. I don't know why it tanked her career, but it did. I didn't think it was that bad, but hey, I'm not the target demographic, I guess. But anyway, yeah, there was a Bloomberg article that I saw that was interesting, talking about how Twitter was going to start adding Bitcoin tipping into their capabilities, and they've already started beta testing it. I haven't done it yet, but I don't know if I'm the right person again that would be that this would be targeted to, because I don't really see why I would do this. But I guess they have it's another way to integrate blockchain into their capabilities and whatnot. And then also trying to move into NFTs, which is another thing that I'm not so sold on. We just did an article for the upcoming issue of the journal that looked at just NFTs in general, and I don't know why anybody would pay money for William Shatner's X-rays of his mouth or of his nose, but I guess these days people will spend money for anything, and so the NFT is just a way for them to further integrate blockchain into the capabilities, and it does kind of, I guess, raise some raised some interesting methods of funding for them going forward, ways of generating revenue, ways of I guess just expanding the use of blockchain and whatnot. So it is interesting. It is an interesting development as far as what they're doing, and so I am interested to see where it goes.
I guess Bitcoin tipping would be good if you're tweeting from El Salvador, but otherwise, I don't know how much value there is in it.
I mean, I guess also for journalists, I guess I could see it having an effect, because if people are breaking news on Twitter, or if they're offering kind of in-depth analysis that you wouldn't get like if you have like a law professor or something, or like a pundit, like like a Steve Laddick, or like someone like that who's been able to use Twitter to really kind of use it as a way of like explaining the law to people, and like getting them to understand certain topics, and like understanding like court cases, or things regarding like disputes between branches of government or whatnot. I could see that. I could see people making money off that.
Yeah, but why not just cash?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't actually. Do they allow? I don't even know if Twitter allows cash tipping. I know they started the tipping thing sometime recently, but the way Bitcoin has been going, I had to go check my Coinbase account here as we were talking to see how much it crashed today. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and certainly there are, certainly Twitter has become a medium for a number of people who are, as you say, using it as a medium for reporting and for contributing valuable content. And there was even a good conversation a week or two ago on Twitter about just to what extent Twitter has replaced blogs in the legal world. And I don't think it has as a blogger, but it certainly has for some people become a substitute for even for blogging. So
yeah, it has, and it's unfortunate as a blogger that happens. But like blogging hasn't completely gone away, but it is annoying as a blogger to find that I will tweet something that gets hundreds of likes, and the story that it's linked to, I see, doesn't get opened nearly as often.
Right.
And I'm like, what the? Just open the thing. It's all there. There's jokes in there.
Yeah. I do try and make it a practice of reading something before I retweet it, because otherwise you might get yourself in trouble, as some politicians have learned over the years, if you retweet something without at least reading it or figuring out what the source is.
They actually ask you if you want to read it before you retweet it. I'm just like, okay, yeah, I guess I should do that before.
which the one time it's asked me, I was
Twitter asked you that?
Twitter asks you. Yeah. It's like, we see you're retweeting this and you did not open the article. Are you sure about this? Yeah. Because I think they do it a lot with ones where like COVID is in the title and stuff, because they're worried about misinformation. In this instance, it was one of those situations where I personally knew the author of the article. So I was like, yeah, no, I do mean to retweet this. But no, it was really cool that they were on top of it. They also once warned me, do you really want to send something that we will definitely ban you for? And I was like, no, I guess not. But I changed.
I have never gotten one of those. So what is?
Yeah, I haven't got one of those either.
Well, their language detector was able to detect exactly what I was calling the person in the reply, and so I changed it. And apparently, the word "scumstick" doesn't hit it for them. So I changed it to "scumstick," and I was fine. But I had another appellation in there and that they did not like. So yeah, but they warned me and I was like, okay, cool. I have a thesaurus here. Let's do it.
Yeah, I've never had that either. And I've also never had the warning about doing my sure I want to retweet this. I use TweetDeck mostly. I don't know if that happens in TweetDeck too, because sometimes things that happen in Twitter doesn't happen in TweetDeck.
Yeah,
I've only used it on stays in TweetDeck. Is that sort of what it is? Or what happens in TweetDeck stays in TweetDeck?
I guess so.
Nice.
The Vegas of Twitter platforms.
Yeah.
It is sometimes. Yeah.
And I have a suite there too, because I'm verified. So
well, you're gonna have to get a suite at the upcoming are we talking about this conference yet, Nikki?
We have not officially, no.
Oh, okay. No. Never mind. You didn't hear it from me. Um, Stay tuned for next week, though. Steve, what do you got this week?
Yeah. Well, I read an article by Andrew Maloney on law.com, which kind of caught my eye. I mean, he was really speculating or interviewing people that were speculating about what it's now going to look like as if and when we ever go back to the office. And the gist of the article was that we've all sort of changed quite a bit, making this sort of, oh, everything's going to be back to normal and we'll soon be back in the office. It'll be just like it always was, less and less probable and less likely, because we have all been traumatized, for lack of a better word, and the expectations of people may be the same. And one of the excellent points that was made in the article is that employers that want people to come back to work, whether they be lawyers or accountants or what have you, are going to have to give a reason to come back to work, to come back to the office. A particular meeting or a particular collaboration or a party or what have you. The notion that somebody is going to have to commute an hour and a half to get to an office and then do the same thing in the office that they could have done at home probably isn't going to fly much anymore. So I just sort of piqued my interest. As for a long time, I was one of the people that thought, well, for better or for worse, at some point, everything will kind of go back to normal work-wise. And the longer we've gone on, the more I'm starting to be convinced that I'm not sure it will ever go back to like it was before. Maybe some semblance of it, and maybe that's for the best. I was following, I think, sometime in the last 2 weeks, the Broadway show Wicked reopened in Broadway, and there was a line. As I was reading this, I was thinking about the song from Wicked. I think it's called "For Good." We can't say that we've been changed for the better, but we've been changed for good. And it sort of made me think of that as I was reading this. I mean, I don't know whether it's better or worse, but I think we've kind of crossed the Rubicon. Things have changed, and that they've changed from this point forward. It's not going to be the same. So it kind of made me think a little bit differently about what work life may ultimately be like if and when it ever changes, or if this is how we're going to be living, and sort of fits and starts and normals and abnormals and what have you. I don't know.
Yeah, I had to go to the office for the first time in like 18 months. Earlier this week, we had a meeting, and so I had to go in for that. And I don't know, it's just like I used to do the commute every day, no problems. Now it's just like walking to the train was a chore. Sitting on the train for like an hour was a chore. Walking from the train station to the office was a chore. And then like just getting there, we have mask requirements for indoors here in Chicago. I imagine it's probably similar to most places, but like, then putting on the mask on, and then like, if people were in the hall, I would just out of habit, I would just like, take the long way around so I didn't have to like pass by them. It was just very, like, it was very weird being back. It was very weird, just because it's almost like I've been gone too long, so it just felt strange and foreign, and like it was really odd. Just like, even though it was nice seeing everybody and it was nice being there, it just little things like that were just like, just really kind of weighed on me there, and it did feel very strange and very foreign in a lot of ways. And I imagine that'll probably be that'll probably be the case for a lot of people, like if and when they go back. But yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, it's everybody. A lot of times people say, "Well, it's great that you have everybody in the office. You can have these water cooler conversations that we never really had because we were all too busy billing hours with our doors closed. But kind of hard to have a water cooler conversation when you're not allowed to get out of your office unless absolutely necessary, and you have to wear a mask the whole time you're out, and then you have to scurry back in.
Plus, I think they shut down our water cooler for like sanitary
Right.
reasons, so it's
That's,
like,
that's exactly
where are we even going to go?
Yeah. And there's a part of me that even dreads those water cooler conversations. I mean, I feel like I've lost social skills over the past 2 years. I was actually supposed to go to New York next week for a business meeting. And I was thinking to myself, like, what did I used to wear when I went to business meetings, and what should I pack, and how do I do this? It's like there was an interview somewhere I read this week, I think with Rick Steves, the travel guy, talking about how he had to go like for some little trip, just from his home up in Seattle down to California or something. And he was trying to remember how to pack for a trip, It's like,
I had the same trouble.
Rick Steves I-5, basically. The new show.
Yeah, when I had the one trip that I've had, I used to have like this little
doesn't fit anymore.
leather sort of pouch with all my cords and chargers and everything in it. But over 18 months, I've pilfered that many times to find something I needed. So when it came time to pack, it wasn't there. I had to scurry around and find it all. It took 45 minutes to get it all back straight.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, yeah, I don't know. Certainly we're all changed, but I do tend to think, we've kind of all been around these cycles enough times as eventually things sort of get back to normal. I mean, I remember thinking after 9/11, nothing would ever get back to normal. And then it got back to normal. So, I mean, that's
exactly
what
I was going to use.
This was 2 years, but
I was going to use
way.
exactly that analogy. That's exactly what I think about all of this. And like little things will remain, but like the Patriot Act, but from the first one, but little things like that. But the thing for me is, you always used to on the subway see those people who would wear masks in the winter, and you were always like, oh, come on. I think going forward, if I get a cold at any point, I'm going to put a mask on because I feel like that's now socially acceptable. But like, that's going to be what I take from this. Otherwise, we're all going to get back to normal real fast.
Yeah. But this is a show about legal tech. And in the history of legal tech, this certainly has been a turning point. I mean, there is no going back in the world of legal tech from what's happened from 18 months ago to now in terms of adoption and use and deployment and even just the flurry of new products, many of them, precipitated by the situation we find ourselves in. So that part is not going to change. Remote. Yeah.
People have grasped the advantages of disadvantages, I guess, but certainly the advantages and freedom of working remotely. And I don't think people are going to be willing to go back. It's to Victor's point that, the commute, I mean, good Lord, doing that every day. And I did it for a long time. And you think, why was I doing this? What exactly was the logic to this?
Yeah. I keep having, my point of reference keeps being, Nikki, that Monroe County Bar Association program that I came and spoke at. Jared Correa and I came from Massachusetts out to speak at it. And that was like, 2019 maybe or something. It was like before the pandemic, and there were like a couple of lawyers there who were just like, I'm going to my grave without technology. I'm not doing it. Forget it. Don't care. Never going to do it. And
one of them just bought an iPad.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think you told me that. It's like, that is so representative of how things have changed.
In fairness, I think he bought a Newton, so like still not quite caught up.
A Palm Pilot.
Pilot, yeah.
A BlackBerry.
Hey, lawyers love BlackBerry. I feel like some lawyers would bring it back if they could.
Yeah.
Word perfect in the BlackBerry.
Right.
In fairness, in all defense of the BlackBerry, its format actually was a better format for text communication. It was that little bit wider than current phones, and the thumbs and physical keys. It was. I give them a lot of credit as a company, and I feel sad that they got kind of crowded out because they really did put out a great product.
I agree with that, Joe. I mean, for texting and emailing, it was a good product. Really was a good product.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything else with it, which was the biggest problem. But
And that's where they lost. Yeah.
that's where they
It was
lost.
also too large for women's hands, if I recall.
Oh, interesting.
Nothing was ever made for women, even though, you know, we are the majority of the population. But don't
Interesting.
get me started. I know I started this, but don't
No,
get
you
me
know,
started.
No, but that's an excellent point, and probably one for a future conversation about like tech decisions that get made by men without recognizing that women have to use it. Because I really did just a second ago say that what I liked about the BlackBerry was it was wider, because I feel like I'm constrained with the current
Right.
typeset, and I need that wider one. And you're like, the problem was it was too goddamn wide. And I'm like, oh, okay. Never would have
Well,
thought of
even-
that.
Even like, you know, it's basic stuff like cars. Cars are designed with male dummies that are like 5'9". And so women in car accidents, women are injured at like more than 50%. I think like 70, like way more often than men in serious car accidents, because the cars aren't made for us. So nothing's really made for us. I'm used to it. And so I shouldn't be complaining about a BlackBerry that's not even around, but you know.
Yeah.
Say designed by male dummies or for male dummies?
Oh, I said bye, but listen, you're the one that, or
No,
yeah, you're
use-
the one. No, I said for.
You
No, I
said
said
for.
using.
Yeah.
Don't put words in my mouth that I'm gonna get in trouble for.
I like Dan O'Day's comment. Why don't they have cool belt clips for the iPhone? That was that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely had one of those at one point.
Depends on how you define cool, but okay.
I know.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
anti-cool, but I definitely had one at one point.
Yeah.
Me too.
I actually just got like last year sometime threw away my Palm Pilot that I had. It was like like sitting in a drawer. I
Wow.
couldn't throw it away. I thought this should go into the museum or something.
Yeah.
I still have
And,
mine.
But I
sitting
could
on
not
the
find a
shelf.
museum that wanted it, so I got rid of it.
I still have the
Mine's-
first iPhone,
Nice.
and I have Google Glass. Jim Stanley from
Google
Just
Glass.
got
Oh,
me
there we
those.
go.
Oh, there you go.
Complimentary. Oh, look at
that.
Oh, you think
It
that's
still
good?
works.
That's one of
It
the.
still works really well too. That's why I keep using it, because it's like
See,
I
that's
think it
one of
looks-
those nice ones.
You still
with
use
like
it?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I still use. I have one even older than that. That's like not got the cool color on it, but like a big chunky black. When they first introduced black ones, but I still keep it around because it has so much more storage space than the phones do. Like I really actually, and you know, that's how we ended up all signing our lives away to different streaming services. But
Right. I was going to say, how do you listen to Spotify on that?
I hate it. I hate it, especially because I listen to non-conventional music a lot. And so I like it constantly is telling me like, we're going to delete your version of this because we think instead you would like to hear. Yeah.
So back to the topic of legal tech and stuff.
What were we talking about?
I don't know what we're talking. I actually, this is like another week when I hardly wrote about anything because I've just been so busy with other stuff, but I did manage to put out a podcast, and I thought it was just worth mentioning because I thought it was really interesting. This guy, Fred Rooney, who a lot of you have probably never heard of, but he is the guy who basically invented the legal incubator, which has become a big thing. I mean, if you don't know what a legal incubator is, basically they tend to be programs associated with law schools. The first one he started was at CUNY Law School in New York. And, they are programs for young lawyers. I say young, not really young, but new lawyers, people just out of law school, to give them kind of a leg up in getting a practice started. They go in and they get office space, they get mentorship, they get training for usually 18 months to 2 years. But the focus is on providing community-based, affordable legal services, low pro bono legal services. He started this first one back in 2007. There's since been like some 70 of them started around 60 around the country, and then another 10 or so outside the US. See you, Joe. Joe has to go debate. What's interesting with him is, it's going to become his career. He goes around and consults on starting these things up all around the country. And then a few years ago, he decided to see if he could get a grant to go help start one in the Dominican Republic, because he's he's fluent in Spanish and wanted to go somewhere where he could use his Spanish fluency, and he got one going there. And then now he's been doing the series of starting these legal incubators in like Pakistan, Bulgaria. At the point that I interviewed him a week and a half or so ago, he had just gotten back from the Gaza Strip, where he was starting an incubator to help young Palestinian lawyers in a program funded by the United Nations. So I just think it's really interesting, because it's a way to both give lawyers the training that they don't get in law school, as we all know, and give them that kind of initial leg up, that initial mentorship that they need, and also be addressing access to justice in a way by getting programs going that are serving low income individuals and businesses in their communities. So if you're not at all aware of legal incubators or of Fred Rooney, that's on my Law Next podcast, give it a listen. The ABA, I would always mention, also has a good site where they maintain a kind of a list of all the legal incubators around the world. I forget I should have the URL of that in front of me, and I don't. But and also the ABA just this year, just in I think it was April or May, published a survey. Probably was it the Legal Technology Resource Center? No, I'm not sure. I'm forgetting now which part of the ABA published it. But on what happens to lawyers who go through these incubator programs, and in fact, a very high percentage of them, something like 90% of them, do go on to start solo and small firm community-based practices. So it really does provide a funnel for these lawyers to go into practicing and serving their communities in a meaningful way. So I think that was kind of innovative, even though it's something that's been around for a while. Anything else? Anything else anybody wants to talk about?
Well, I did have something else that I posted, which I thought was, let me pull it up. It was the fact that in Dallas, I just thought it was an example of just tech competence in general on a large scale. In Dallas, I'm putting it in the chat, sorry, that there were 22 terabytes of police data from the criminal courts in Dallas was lost when they tried to download data from the cloud onto a disk, if I recall correctly. And initially they thought they'd lost some, and then they realized they lost a lot more. And approximately 8 terabytes remain missing after the recovery effort. But they also discovered an additional 15 terabytes of Dallas police evidence and files from the city secretary's office were missing. And it included all sorts of, they say, to put it in perspective, it's the equivalent of 7,500 hours of HD video, or about 6 million photos, or 150 million pages of Microsoft documents. And that it included data that photos, videos, audio, and case notes from criminal cases. And also some, if I recall, there was like, it was evidence, it was evidence in cases. And so I just thought that was an interesting example of tech incompetence, and on a significant scale. And that was pretty impactful. So that was really the main reason that I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, and what was it that they did? How did they lose it exactly?
They were trying to download stuff from the cloud onto a physical drive. And it was archived police files. I guess they were just, I don't know know why you would put it on a physical drive if it was already in the cloud. Maybe I don't know, maybe their cloud plan was too expensive. I'm not sure. Their storage plan, they were trying to make room instead of upgrading. It seems like a strange move to me to archive stuff onto a physical drive.
Yeah,
maybe they were trying to free up space,
Yeah, but cloud stuff, cloud storage space is really pretty reasonable these days. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I know it's a lot of terabytes, I agree, but still, it kind of surprises me. But it just seems like a big
I I can just see some person sitting in their office going, it's really not safe to have all this shit on the cloud now. We really need to get it off there, save it someplace secure. And boom.
Yeah, and somebody just mentioned in the chat, Frank Reedy's article on aggressive sales how aggressive sales tactics are putting off legal buyers. It got some interest. That did get a lot of interest this week. Maybe if Zach is back next week or somebody we could maybe we can talk about it a little bit. That was an interesting piece that they did. But otherwise, we will give you all a few minutes back out of this hour and look forward to seeing you all again here next week, same time, same place, and maybe with a little guest speaker if we can get that arranged. So hopefully.
Hopefully.
Right. Good.
I'm working on it.
All
right.
Have a good
Good.
week. Have a good weekend, everyone.
All right. Stay
Bye all.
tuned. Stay well. See you next week.